Hey guys, Kathy Iconis here, and we are going to get started in 1 second. I want to let everyone be able to get into the webinar, and this is where I get distracted. I tell people this, where I'm making sure everyone's like flowing in, everything's working right over here. Me doing my dorky weirdness. Um, so everything's coming in, sounds good. And what I want to ask of you guys here is to, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A area. That is easier for us to manage and make sure Taryn gets those questions so that we can get them answered for you. Feel free to use the chat to talk to each other and stuff, but it's not a great place to ask questions. We might remind you just go and put that in the Q&A area if you can, if you do end up doing that. So today we have Knowify with us. I'm super excited. I've done some stuff with Taryn in the past, some demos and whatever, but it's been a little while since I've looked at the app, and I just love what all they have done for construction industry contractors. I used to work for a global construction company, so I know like some of what people need, but definitely not on like the small business level. But yeah, they've captured everything you need here. So super excited. I'm going to hand it off to Taryn so that he can tell us more about himself and Knowify.
Perfect. And thanks, Kathy, for the intro, and also just thanks for having us. We're always happy to have an opportunity to show Knowify to people, and you'll hear me say it all the time. Yeah, I refer to it as spreading the good word of Knowify.
There you go.
And basically, what we're going to be doing here, what I'm going to be showing you guys is a little bit more about what Knowify is, giving you a quick demo, and then answering any questions you have via Q&A at the end. Just so, if you're wondering something about Knowify, I'll help, get all those questions answered. But first, just to intro myself, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Taryn Callion. I run our customer experience team at Knowify. Basically anything that involves, people interacting with Knowify, best chances are I have my hands in it somewhere here and there. I work with our product experts to get people trained up in using Knowify. I work with the support team, so those tickets that come in, and I do a lot of sales support as well. So if you haven't got to know me, feel free to reach out to me via email or on Facebook. Always happy to chat about Knowify. And just kind of a little outline of what I'm going to cover today. First, I want to talk about what we call the Knowify process, this Knowify flow of budget, bid, track, and invoice. And this part of the webinar that I'm going to be discussing is almost bigger than Knowify. It's more about contractor workflow and how we expect them to move through the life cycle of a job. Next, I'll also talk about who can actually use Knowify. What types of customers are best fits for Knowify? Because that's another common question we get. We are a job costing platform. So a lot of people will bring a lot of different industries because job costing isn't unique to construction. And then there's also a variety of different types of, jobs inside construction. So I just like to give a little bit more of a breakdown of, what specific companies are really going to be that perfect fit for us. And then I'll also briefly discuss our QuickBooks integration. I'll be covering that in the demonstration as well, but I just like to give a little bit of an overview of how we integrate with QuickBooks, why we integrate with QuickBooks. And then that's when I'll get into a demonstration. I'll show you a little bit about the inside of Knowify, kind of do a mock-up job so you can see what the workflow looks like. And then we'll also be covering a Q&A. And so as you go through, and Kathy had already said this, but if you could just submit any questions in Zoom's Q&A, if you enter them while we're going through, I'll cycle it around to them at the end and make sure that I answer them all. And then obviously you can ask them at the end of the demonstration if there's if there's something that I didn't touch on that you wanted more info on. But first I want to talk about this workflow: budget, bid, track, and invoice. Now, when I go through my demonstration, you'll see how this very much is a Knowify workflow because we built our system around this process, but it really also is something that we find to be the most effective workflow for guaranteeing profitability on a project. And it all starts in the budget. So if I get a new request for a project from a client, what I want to do first is not actually quote them a price. I want to estimate internally how much that job's going to cost me. So that's the idea of doing things like creating a list of materials I'll need to buy, writing out how many hours it's going to take my team, understanding how much I pay my team, so that once I summarize everything, I know that the job should cost me X. It should cost me $10,000. Once I have that extra piece of information, I can use it to then get into the second part of this process, which is bidding. I know that the job, based off of my estimate, should cost me around $10,000. So when I get to the bidding, I want to say, well, it needs to be more than $10,000, and I want the margin to be wide enough that it encompasses all of the extra money I need to make too. My overhead, my profit, contingencies for the chances that we go over budget, and so I can say, well, it should cost me around $10,000. I'm going to do it for $15,000. And then we also have a lot of other features built in with the bidding aside from just that markup, because that's when we get into things like, custom documents that go out to the customer so you can have this nice professional look that is accompanying your company when they get the proposal. It also has, built-in e-signature. So stuff like, you really want the customer to think that you're a modern, forward-thinking company. Having digital signature, stuff like that, big plus in their eyes. The next part of this process is tracking. So, we've estimated the cost of the job, we've quoted a price to the client. Now that the job is live, because I'm assuming that the client signs everything that you send them, I want to see how much it actually costs me. And this is when we get into the more traditional job costing of how much am I spending in my employee time, in my purchases, in my bills from vendors, from subcontractors. This is where we're really tracking the actual workflow, seeing how much we're spending, and I can compare it to that step one budget. Always a really important piece of information. It's nice to see job costing, but being able to see job actual cost versus estimated cost is even more important, because it gives us, first of all, an idea of how far are we from going over budget. And then it also tells us, should we be budgeting differently in the future? Did we overestimate or underestimate the cost of this before the job started? Because that, as mentioned earlier, can greatly change what we're going to be bidding to the client. And then the final part of the process is invoicing. We have gotten through setting up a project and doing the work. Now we need to make some money on it. So that's where we're tracking our revenue. And what Knowify does when it comes to invoicing is really helps the process of progress invoicing, which is a very common pain point for a lot of contractors that we work with. We also do the AIA form, which I can touch on briefly if people are interested in seeing more of that, where we're keeping the contractor organized on the invoicing workflow so nothing gets left behind. But, again, I always use the broad term of contractor, but I like to specify a little bit more of what I mean when I talk about a contractor. And the main, target customer for Knowify is a trade contractor. So think less of someone putting up a skyrise and they're, overseeing this massive, multi-$100 million project, and think more, I install electrical systems in those buildings and that big GC is hiring me to do the work. If they have a specific trade like that, they're probably going to be a much better fit for Knowify, because they're going to have their own crews that they're tracking. They're going to be purchasing materials. They're going to be managing progress invoicing with the customer, with the general contractor. And so that's a much better fit for us. That being said, it's not like being a general contractor means you can't use Knowify, because we do have a lot of, remodelers and smaller GCs who are doing true contract work with customers. They have their own crews, and they just need to get a singular system where they can plug in all of their hours, all of their bills from subs, bills from vendors. And again, Knowify is going to be a great way for them to manage all of that in one place. As far as sizes of companies, we do find that there's no exact top or bottom number of annual revenue that works with Knowify, but we do see that the companies that come to Knowify are generally trending upwards. Let's say they just had their first $1 million year and they're trying to expand. They are getting 10 more jobs this year than they did last year. They're looking at maybe 5 to 10 million in revenue. you know, when you get to a point that Excel is starting to overwhelm you and you can't track it all there, best chances are that's when you're going to start looking into Knowify. And we're definitely a great stepping stone for people who are getting into their first cloud system for job costing and construction management. And then again, I mentioned this briefly when it came to the proposal management, but if you want to really organize and get modern with your business and have a more professional look when you're communicating with your customer, there's a huge benefit of using Knowify for things like those custom proposals, change orders, invoices. So it's not like something that you're scribbling really quickly on a piece of paper, sending in the mail. It's all happening quickly. It's all happening as professionally and digitally as possible. Next, I'm getting into QuickBooks integration and basically the idea behind Knowify and why we are always working with bookkeepers and accountants and people who are actually managing the back end of a construction business is that we have this QuickBooks integration. And the idea is that as a contractor, I can use Knowify and I could do things like job costing. I'm entering my bills, I'm entering my invoices, and that automatically plugs information into QuickBooks for me. So if you don't want your client actually touching the QuickBooks, but you still want them to do the input, this is a great way to kind of have the best of both worlds, where the construction companies are using the construction software, everything is built for their business, whereas on the accounting side, you're using accounting software, QuickBooks. And it gives you a lot of flexibility on how this all works. It's all instantaneous, bi-directional integration. So really whatever workflow works best between you and the customer, we have a great solution for it on the Knowify side. But now I'm going to show you a little bit more about kind of how this all works.
Yay.
So this is going to be the first page I show on any demonstration of Knowify. And I like this page because it really focuses on what Knowify is prioritizing, and that's job costing. So I can see here's a list of my projects. Here is the current revenue on the project, the current cost, and with that information, my profitability. And so aside from that, I'm also getting information on, are we still bidding the job? Is it just an current lead? Is it active? And I can expand these charts too. So it's not just showing me cost, but also material costs, labor costs broken down. If I had budget set up for this job, it'll show me that. I have revenue, but is it billed revenue or is it paid revenue? And so that's the idea, is that, I'm getting a little bit more information about all these projects and where we stand on them just at the high level here. But what I'm going to do is create a new job so you can kind of see what this workflow looks like to get those numbers.
And can I say how great it is that you give that overview? Because I know even just in an accounting firm, it is so hard to see the big picture of everything going on. And you're able, that's a great snapshot view.
Yeah, of course.
Of looking that.
I mean, it's also, from the perspective of the contractor, right? Like if I see this job that's showing me, 5% loss right now, that $720 margin, may not seem like much. Maybe I just haven't sent an invoice yet, but it actually could be a nice little, reminder of, oh, right, I never sent my September 1st invoice for this job. And so it's just making sure that I'm getting stuff moving as fast as possible. So it's not like at the end of the month, I realize that, oh man, I just invested an extra $10,000 in this job that I haven't made any money on yet. I better make sure I get this out. And then, you might be a little bit behind, and it's good to get the information as fast as possible. And that's something you'll hear us talk about a lot at Knowify, is that it's not just job costing, it's real-time job costing. We give you the information as soon as you get it.
Well, in real-time project management of, I said, there's been so many times early on that it was hard for me to track all the clients and what I had to do and everything, because there was never, I can come up with a list on a client, but getting this big picture of seeing everything and knowing where stuff is, that's been pretty difficult to find.
Absolutely. And that's, not as difficult with Knowify.
Exactly. I love it.
Um, so what I'll do is add a new job here. Just going to give it a suggested name. And the first thing it prompts me for is a client. And this is one of the first places I like to mention our integration with QuickBooks, because this client database actually comes in from my QuickBooks account. And the way Knowify is built to, with this bi-directional sync, if I add new clients to Knowify, those go to QuickBooks as well. So again, the idea is that you don't want to have your contractors reach out to you every time they have new clients. Say, can you please enter this into QuickBooks? They just use Knowify and it automatically updates in both softwares. Next, it's asking about what describes the job. What type of contract are we going to be offering the client? Fixed price is our most common option in Knowify. It's just very simple progress invoicing. It lets you manage change orders, all of the basics that contractors are going to need. We also offer that same exact format, but it comes out in AIA invoice style instead of the standard one that we'll send. It's going to be a little bit more similar to the QuickBooks invoice style. Big time saver for contractors that need AIA billing. We've had a lot of customers specifically, reference that as like, this is, our favorite thing in Knowify. We used to spend an hour building an invoice. Now it takes 30 seconds. So anyone, who needs AIA billing definitely should take a look at this.
You know how many AIAs I've seen in Excel and the math doesn't work? And it
Yeah,
just
it's very
drives me crazy.
Excel for sure. And then, Excel won't sync up with QuickBooks either. So
Right. No. Well, if you, yeah, and sending it over to GC and yeah, all that fun stuff.
Um, we also do offer cost plus contracts. So I talk a lot about fixed price and progress invoicing. Cost plus is just going to do the classic time and materials job where, we'll collect all of the expenses that you put in towards your job cost and build an invoice for you. And maintenance, I never really get too much into, but this is the idea of if you have a recurring appointment contract with the customer, let's say you are a sprinkler head installation company. A lot of times after you do the installation, you sign a separate contract saying we'll also check them, once every 6 months just to confirm everything's running smoothly. We can set those up in Knowify as well. Now, when asked about job costing style, this is a Knowify field that we kind of just invented to make sure that everyone can work with the workflow that's best for them. And one of the first things I talked about in this webinar was the idea of budget, bid, track, invoice. And in Knowify, we call that the professional workflow. In simple and advanced, you skip the budget stage of that. So you start and you just create your bid. Once it's active, you track and you invoice. But the benefit of building the budget first is that you have a better chance of bidding a price that is going to be high enough that you can be profitable on that project. So I'll show you how that works here. Every other field here is optional, but I will set a job address. I always like to do this because when you use Knowify, we actually have a built-in smartphone app where employees can punch in and punch out of the job site, and it will let you know what time they checked in and where they were. So if they're off-site, it actually knows because we have the job site on file as well. Now, when I set up this job, so I saved this job, now 1755 is in my system. Now I'm officially starting the budget stage of that budget, bid, track, invoice flow. And I built a budget by adding what we call job phases, where I could say, first we need to do site prep and demolition, where I'll probably spend roughly $4,000 on materials and $3,000 on labor. And let's say I have to hire a sub for $2,000 as well. Now my job is budgeted at $9,000, and it gives me a breakdown of categories that make up that $9,000. What I can also do, though, is get more detailed in the budget and build more phases. So when I track the cost of this job, the cost versus budget, it's not at the job level, but it's broken down into each phase that we are building out as budgets. So if I need to do framing and cabinets next. Again, I could just plug in a materials budget, but I want the ability to get more detailed than that because anyone can just plug in a dollar figure. But let's say I know what I need to buy and it's in my database from Knowify, or if it's in my product database in QuickBooks, I could say that I need to buy, lumber. I can choose from different options. And again, this is synced up with your product and service database in QuickBooks. So it's something that you don't need to build from scratch, but if you are building it in Knowify, it syncs up to QuickBooks as well. And I could say, I'll need 200 studs of lumber. I'm going to need to buy some plywood. And I'll probably need to buy, 100 sheets of ply, a couple boxes of nails. And you can see that since all of these have estimated costs associated with them, it's building out my budget based off of, my unit cost times my quantity. So as I put all of this together, it's a pack of 40. It's just saying, well, the materials on framing should cost you about $1,500. And that's my way of being able to use quantities and my knowledge of what actually needs to go into the job to build out the dollar figure that's going to back all of that. Same thing goes for labor. If I don't know how much my labor costs, but I know how many hours it takes, I could say I need a foreman, I need laborers. The foreman will be there for, it's one guy for a week, and the laborers will be, let's call it 3 guys working with him for that same week. And you have rates associated with all of your employees and all of your types of employees in this case. So it's going to say, well, if it does take you that many hours, it should cost you $6,000 in labor. And that's basically how we can put together a budget in Knowify and kind of just give you a little bit more organization behind all of this info. So now this job is budgeted at $16,500. I've gotten through the budget process. Next, I'm going to click Create Proposal to get to the bidding side of things. And this is where Knowify starts some of its automation, is use project plan phases. We want you to use that budget to help you bid. So we create a line item of your bid to represent each phase of your job. So I have site prep, and it says, just so you know, here was how much you budgeted. So I could say, perfect. Add 50% markup, and it applies to both line items. Now I can always adjust pricing if I need. Let's call this $11,300. I want a little bit of a $20 contingency there. Any kind of adjustments I need to make, always an option. And basically what this is doing is putting together a proposal for me based off of the information that it has from the budget plus my markup. And so you can see how the process of building out a proposal can be almost instantaneous, where I didn't really need to do too much building, and I have this nice looking PDF proposal document automatically generated. And then again, I had mentioned this earlier, but we customize these documents as well. And I know that in a lot of industries, having a attractive looking proposal can be a make or break. Not every customer is just looking at the final price. If you have a lower price but a lower quality looking document, they may say like, well, yeah, that's cheaper, but it looks like the quality of work may be cheaper. And so getting these custom documents is always a big plus when it comes to making sure that everything's signed and you win as many jobs as possible.
And you make it so easy that it's a no-brainer on being able to do that.
The work is really all done on our end. All you have to do is just send us a little document and say, like, this is what we want our proposals to look like, and our team's incredible at doing this. So,
cool.
And aside from just generating this, I'd mentioned this one earlier as well, but we do have digital e-signature built in, so you can email it right to the customer and they can sign it right through Knowify. It's not like they need a login or anything. It's a temporary portal just so they can write, yes, I approve this work. Always important to get signatures on things. You don't want to have to end up, in any kind of court case over a construction project. It always lasts forever.
Yeah, that
not
a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. Available on change orders as well, which is actually the bigger make or break usually. But
right, that makes sense.
I'm going to skip the e-signature process and just go ahead and make this active. Now I have a $24,000 contract that's active. I've gone through budgeting. I've gotten my bid approved. Now I want to get to tracking. So I'm going to go back to plan and track where I set up my budget. Again, what I really like about Knowify is how much it's going to automate a lot of my processes to make sure that I don't need to keep re-entering the same information over and over again. So if I come to my framing phase, I could just click purchase. It knows what I put in the budget. So I just choose which items I need to buy, and it'll generate a purchase order for me using the information that was in my budget. So you can see how we really went quickly from setting up a budget. Now I'm already creating a purchase order without having to create a purchase order, right? I just click a button and now it has a document that's already ready to go. And I can email it right to my vendor through Knowify as well. Again, that's really just a big benefit of like, it's not just that it's keeping a log of all of your job costs, but it's simultaneously helping you create the job costs. So when I'm sending a PO, I'm doing it through Knowify, and Knowify is updating my material cost to date. Same thing goes for bill entry. When I get a bill from, in this case, Home Depot, let's see, it's PO 1844. I could say bills, add new, and assuming my vendor is good enough about referencing this, I could say they sent me a bill for 1844. And it automatically pulls up the outstanding balance. So I could say, perfect, that is exactly how much I spent, submit. And when I log this bill, it's going to close out that PO, first of all, just so I know I don't need to manually make an adjustment there. There's nothing else that's coming in on that PO. But it also is going to log this bill in my QuickBooks account for me. That way, I don't need to enter it twice. I don't need to ask my client who's a contractor, can you send me all of your bills? Because they want to enter their bills for the sake of managing their purchase orders, for the sake of their job costing, and it's getting into QuickBooks for the sake of, accounting. And so that's automatically all happening as they, just use Knowify for their day-to-day. Then when it comes to managing the payment of the bill, that can be manually entered in Knowify. Yes, we've paid this bill. But again, since we have this bi-directional integration, if you use QuickBooks and manage payments in QuickBooks, those close out the bills that you have created in Knowify. And that extends out to things that integrate with QuickBooks. So if you're using bill.com to pay all the bills that end up in QuickBooks, those will go right back to QuickBooks and then into Knowify. And so you really do get a lot of flexibility when it comes to Knowify and our integration with QBO.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah, we always like to be friendly with all the other softwares in the network. It's really set up perfectly for people to build out a tech stack and really create what works best for them. And you can see that now if I check on this job, it's cost me $1,300 out of my $16,000 budget. It just gives me a little bit more information on where we stand. And I just showed you one workflow that ends up to material costing. There's a variety of different things I could do. I can do cash expenses, or I can do what we call allocate from catalog, which is somewhere I could say like, oh, we had a leftover dumpster rental from a previous project at $100 a day. They're letting me borrow this for an extra 7 days. And I can just manually adjust material costing as well. That's kind of Knowify's version of a journal entry where I could just make adjustments to the job as we go. But next, what I wanted to get into is labor costing, which is one of our more popular topics in Knowify. First, there is simple entry where I could just say enter time. It pulls up what we call the foreman view, where I just have a list of my employees and I write in how many hours they spent on this job today. And each of these employees is associated with an hourly rate. So as they enter time, it's automatically adjusting the cost of the job. But we also have the ability to get a little bit more project management and automation out of this, where I can say, I'll use the resource board because we have a variety of different scheduling tools here. But I could set up a schedule and assign different things to employees. So let's see, I think that was called 1755. And I could say assign the framing and cabinets to George on Thursday. And then if I need, I can grab the rest of his crew. And if I also want, I can send a push notification directly to these users' phones and emails. So it's just giving me the ability, kind of like how the purchase order simultaneously log job cost as well as send something to my vendor. This is a way that I can send something to my employees so they can start tracking time, which gives me my labor costing. So a lot of different things in Knowify will have multiple different, functions at the same time, so you don't have to keep jumping between different softwares and changing up where everything is entered. And And
Are
if I
you,
go back to, yeah,
I was gonna say, I mean, you said employees. Do any of the subs go out like on that view?
you
Or is
can
that
go
somewhere
out to
else?
subs. You know, it's pretty common for contractors to use 1099 vendors. And
Yeah,
so, you know, when we track employees, you can also track 1099 vendors and sync to QuickBooks that same way.
cool.
And you can see that, you know, when people are scheduled, it shows up in the manual input inside Knowify a little bit more easily. But again, we do have a smartphone app where I can see, you know, a little bit more about um, the time entries that are being plugged into Knowify. Where I can see, like, you know, Thursday the 20th, Paul checked in. He was off site by over 2 miles. He was in for 1 hour. And I just get a little bit of a breakdown that goes behind all of these time entries. Instead of us just having 1 hour, I know the full story behind this 1 hour. And that's always a very useful thing in construction as well, to make sure that people are actually, you know, at the job site when they said they were and working on the correct task.
Hmm. I'm like, yeah, offsite, offsite, offsite.
Yeah, it's a, you know, far job site. They just couldn't make it in time. Um,
They
so
were manifesting what they were doing.
exactly. Um, so in the review time section, I can approve time entries, which will sync them to the weekly timesheet in QuickBooks. Um, and we also run a variety of payroll reports. So if you're not using QuickBooks for payroll, or if you don't need to sync them to QuickBooks, we can still get you those hours in an Excel format. But more importantly, in Knowify, if I check on the status of this job, since it's now had time logged against it, it's going to show me my current labor cost to date. And this is another place where really, you know, I want to really highlight that real-time job costing, because with every single time entry that these employees enter, if they enter in a, you know, material they used in the field, something that they purchased in the field, it's updating with each transaction. So I know that this $4,400 out of my $16,500 budget is about as accurate and quick of a number as I could possibly get. And then more importantly than seeing it at the job level, this is another big part of Knowify, is that you're going to see it at the phase level as well. So let's say a job ends up running over budget. I want the ability to see which part of the job ran over budget. If it's everything, then I know I just need to work a little bit better on my budgets moving forward. But there's, you know, I've worked with customers in the past where they said, like, we learned from using Knowify that we should just tell our customers that we don't offer demolition, because every time we do demolition, we run so far over budget that it, you know, takes out a chunk of our margins and we end up losing money on those jobs. And they said it actually made a huge difference in their business, knowing that they no longer need to offer one of these specific services, and
Hmm.
all of their jobs were starting to, you know, get much better looking profit margins moving forward. But as far as these, you know, cost versus budget reports go, again, you know, it's at the job level, it's at the, you know, type level, but then it's also broken down to the phase level, and then those are also broken down to materials and labor, and we give you the quantities as well. So when I see that framing and cabinetry is taking me 8 hours instead of 40, that's more important to me than having the 370 out of 1800, because it's telling me that regardless of how much I'm paying my foreman in this day and age, I know that it takes 8 hours to complete this project. And obviously, this is an in process one, but the idea is that when I create a new budget, I'm going to be able to reference this old job at any point in time, see how long it actually took, and adjust my budget to match. And so that way, you know, we are giving you this historical reporting as a reminder of what you should be using next time you create a new budget. You know, if you budget lower, then you can quote lower and win more jobs. If you budget higher, then you can quote higher and be more profitable on jobs. So there's really a win-win there. There's no downside to ever seeing this cost versus budget information.
Definitely like the hours versus,
Yeah, absolutely. And I
yeah,
know that, you know, in the industry, that's definitely the more asked for field. You know, as
right.
much as they love to see cost versus budget, they say, like, I want to see hours spent versus hours budgeted, so I can
Because
see
that means more to them.
absolutely.
They understand that because they're out in the field and seeing like, okay, well, someone spent this much time on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when it's backed with those locations of in and out, they could see, like, is it actually taking more time, or are we just not being as efficient with the hours because everyone's punching in at the Starbucks around the corner?
Yeah, exactly.
So we've gone through setting up a budget. We have gotten our bid out and approved. We have tracked some of the cost of the job. Now I want to get to invoicing. So I'll come back to my contract where we set up our bid, where we set up our proposal. This is also where we create change orders. So if I had to say like, upgraded cabinet pulls, it's going to be an extra $1,000. Again, something I could send out for e-signature. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but this is one of the biggest pain points that I hear from contractors is they say the customer gives them the verbal okay on something that requires additional billing. And then when they get the bill after you've done the work, they say like, oh, I didn't know it would cost this much. I simply won't pay it. And so it's always good to get a signature on a change order before, performing any of the work there. Now when I click invoice now, I'm going to be building out a progress invoice for this project where I could say, we're 75% done with our site prep and halfway done with cabinetry. And we'll keep track of that. So the next time you try to invoice, it'll only let you invoice 25% remaining on site prep and 50% remaining on cabinetry. So that way you don't end up over or under invoicing. The invoices can be emailed directly to the client through Knowify. And we do include integration with Square and another system called PaySimple to get payment right through the Knowify invoice. But this invoice is also syncing with your QuickBooks account. So you can actually record the payment in QuickBooks and that syncs back to Knowify. It's really just whatever works best for your system. And then what I did here was just manually entered in, yes, the client has paid me. That syncs to QuickBooks as well. And again, the idea is that, as a contractor, I need to send out invoices one way or another. But now using Knowify, I get the benefit of those invoices logging themselves into QuickBooks as well. And just to get back to the whole purpose of all this work I've been doing, now I get a little bit of a breakdown on 1755, which is pending response on a change order. I have billed $15,775 out of my $24,000 contract. They've paid it all, and I'm actually negative in work in progress, which means I've overbilled, which makes sense because I still haven't spent too big of a percentage of my material and labor budgets today. I'm also looking at a $11,000 profit on this job, which comes out to a 71% margin. And that's the idea behind Knowify, is that just using all of these contractors' tools, I'm simultaneously getting all of this information on what's exactly happening in my job at this exact moment today. And I am getting all this information into QuickBooks so that my accounting team can tell me how's the company doing today. Mm-hmm. Another thing I'd like to cover really quickly, since we're working with bookkeepers and accountants, is our construction company advisor network. If you guys are interested in getting certified in how to use Knowify and becoming one of our Knowify advisors, I definitely recommend reaching out to Madison. She's going to help you get your advisor account set up, where you get a free account that you can test. Connect to your QuickBooks if you want. Just learn a little bit more about Knowify. It also gives you free access to any of your clients' accounts. And then once you pass our certification, it's a pretty simple 5-part webinar series followed by a 5-part quiz. You can get discounts on Knowify accounts for your clients. You can get bounties if that works better for you. We have a bunch of different options that are available. It's a great network to be a part of. And then beyond getting the benefits directly from your customers on Knowify, we'll actually send customers your way as they come into us and ask for help. One of the most common things that happens to us on the support side is someone will say, not how do I get this into QuickBooks, but where should it go in QuickBooks? And I'm always the first one to say, I'm not an accountant. Please don't ask me how you should be doing your accounting. So I can get your information from Knowify to QuickBooks. Where it goes in QuickBooks is a different question entirely. And so we love sending them to accountants that can help them out with their business. It's kind of a win for everyone involved, since they're going to get better bookkeeping. We get better Knowify customers as a result, and then you guys can get some more customers that way as well, which is a huge benefit for everyone involved. But now I see that some questions did come in, so I'd love to go through those a little bit as well.
Yeah, and if anyone else has any questions, go ahead and start popping them in here so that we can take a look at them.
I did see that a lot of them came into the chat as well.
That was me asking Addison a few questions. Don't worry about that. So Greg was asking, what does the onboarding setup look like if a construction company is brand new to Knowify? So like minutes, hours, days, weeks, what all's involved?
Very good question. So it's a good question because I don't have a good answer for it. The reality is setting up Knowify with QuickBooks can take a couple minutes. You click connect, it gets all of your clients, vendors, and all of that information into Knowify, and then you can probably walk through your admin section, put in all of your users and rates, and within less than an hour you have your account set up. As far as setting up a company to really get themselves using Knowify, self-sustaining on Knowify, it could take a couple weeks to a couple months based off of how in-depth of use of Knowify they need, and how I guess how many different features that they need, how advanced their business is. But it's built to be simple to use, right? That's a big policy at Knowify is when we build new features, we always think like, okay, yes, it does a lot, but will people figure out how to use it? Beyond that, we do offer free training and support for everyone using Knowify. We do screen shares. We do, we build a big knowledge base. I do a lot of YouTube videos. So anything we can do to help, never be shy about reaching out to our team. It doesn't cost you anything, and we're always happy to do it.
What are some of the common issues you have with onboarding that you see?
That's a good question. I mean,
I was assuming that it's going to be harder for someone that's coming from Excel and wants to go and get this whole workflow. They might need to just take baby steps to get there, which you are obviously providing in those different options.
I'd say one thing that would be somewhat relevant is people with messy QuickBooks accounts have a harder time starting on Knowify sometimes.
Because, with like 500 items that are duplicates.
They had 3 different vendors called the Home Depot. One was Home Depot, the other one is the Home Depot, one's like Home Depot Incorporated. And so they end up having, which one do I log my expenses against?
Right.
Like, well, QuickBooks, we do all of them against this one, except for a couple that are against this one. Those are things that can kind of slow down onboarding. But again, we are very hands-on with the process. So whatever we can do, just let us know.
Makes sense.
Looks like we got another question. Can you send a contract to a subcontractor? You can send a work order as in a request for work, but they can't e-sign that yet. We are looking into that in the future. It's just not available at this point in time. And then the follow-up was, can you attach receipts from Home Depot to expense transactions? You absolutely can, and we'll store them on file with that job and with that purchase. It won't sync the document itself to QuickBooks, but obviously the balance is synced to QuickBooks, so you know how much you've spent with Home Depot. And the document is always stored in Knowify in case you need to reference it for an audit or anything along those lines.
Yeah, so all the documents are going to be stored in Knowify. And that'll be like the source of everything for these jobs, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a question, can you show job costing reports? We do run a variety of reports. I won't actually download anything, but like the reality is the best reporting in Knowify is what you see in Knowify. And when I open up a project and I look at, plan and track, Knowify by nature just is job costing. So all this information of cost versus budget is really what you are looking for as a contractor most of the time. That being said, we do have a lot of different ways that we export this information into Excel. So basically the logic between doing everything in Excel is that everyone has very slightly different needs and, desires of how they want their reports laid out. So if we give you the data, then you have the ability to create very custom reports with Excel. Obviously, you guys are very familiar with how good they are at what they do. So that's always an option. That being said, we have reports that are run at the job level. And then I can also go to job reports. You can see a variety of different options here that are all about cost versus budget, work in progress, cost versus revenue, P&L, how much do I need to order in the next month? That's the type of stuff that we'll always have available as well. Another question was, does Knowify talk to Sage 50? At this point, QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop are the only two systems that we integrate with. We will likely expand on that in the future, but right now Sage 50 is not an option.
Can I butt in? I have a question too. On the users that you have going in and being able to use Knowify, do you have customization as to what they can access and stuff?
Yeah, of course. When you set up a user in Knowify, you can set up a variety of different permissions of what they can and can't see. Security is obviously very important to us. We want to make sure that everyone in Knowify is only seeing the information that they're supposed to be seeing.
Oh, approval authority.
Yep. So you can basically make sure if they're set to $0 approval authority, it means they can't submit any purchases without it getting approved first.
Okay.
There's a question, can this be used for real estate investment where the investor can see the job cost to date without accessing QuickBooks? We've had people ask us about this in the past. It's really just not what Knowify is built for. But, I always say if someone has a need for tracking the cost of labor, materials, expenses, everything along those lines, then they could probably find some use for us. And we do have a customer portal. So if you want to provide your customer, let's say you have an investor who says like, I want to see how far along you are on this project, then you can provide them with that portal that will show them status as you work along each step of the way. This one, not really a question, but they're saying, I'm assuming the more detailed your inventory of materials, the more accurate your bids. Absolutely right. Yeah. And then you can import a database of materials that you're frequently purchasing into Knowify or into QuickBooks. It'll sync either way. We do recommend you import it into QuickBooks if you have to choose between the two, because it syncs up a little bit faster that way. But yeah, the more materials you have in your Knowify catalog, the better your whole budgeting process is going to be, which means, as we've seen, the more accurate your bidding process is going to be.
Is there a limit to how many items we can have in QuickBooks? I don't think there is, right?
To the best of my knowledge, there isn't.
Hopefully they don't change that anytime soon.
But again, yeah.
Like at different levels or something. And then in Knowify, when things sync back over, it's not necessarily creating like projects in QuickBooks Online, is it?
It doesn't create projects. If necessary, it can create sub-customers.
Okay.
But QuickBooks hasn't opened up their API for projects at this point in time, so we don't have that option.
Well, but at the same time, I think this is far more like in depth than what QuickBooks has for projects right now. So if they even did have that API, it would probably just get confusing over there of, the information. Like here is actually much more in depth than what you would get.
Absolutely. I mean, even with that projects feature, like you said, they don't have the phase breakdown. Their progress invoicing isn't really as in depth as ours. They don't even touch on AIA invoicing. So there's always some Knowify either way.
Well, the budgeting is always been, they have it. It's just, it's difficult to work through. So this is much easier, and being able to budget time is huge. Yeah,
of course. The reality is there's so many different apps and integrations out there, and we like to work with all of them, right? So even though we have time tracking, we still integrate with T-Sheets, because as an app that only does timesheets, they'll always have some extra features that we don't offer. And it's the same thing with QuickBooks when it comes to job budgeting, right? If it's our specialty, so we're going to do it better than them no matter what. That's always something that we work on. It's like, if it's not as important to you to get detailed job budgets, then we actually still tell people like, hey, if Knowify is becoming too much of an expense and you only have one project with a very simple budget, you should just go back to QuickBooks Projects and you could save yourself some money. But if you really do need to see cost versus budget reporting, then there's really not going to be very much in the industry that competes with what we do.
Right. Totally agree.
There's another question. Is there an audit trail on POs and invoices? And then a follow-up of, is there an audit trail or security on time cards? So I'm going to answer these two simultaneously. Every transaction, as far as purchases, invoices, bills goes, they all have their own audit trail of different things that have happened and which users have performed that action. Oop, I clicked the wrong button there. Every job also has a log to give you information on what's been happening in that job. But here's a very simple one that says like purchase created. But if I were to come in here and say, I didn't mean to replicate, I meant to edit. If I were to come in here and edit this, remove an item, anything along those lines, submit. It should be showing me in that audit trail, purchase edited Taryn on September 10th. 1151. And so we do keep that type of log for every type of transaction, purchases, bills, invoices. As far as time goes, we have obviously your check-in and out view that shows you time in, time out, all of this information. If a user is checked in by someone else, let's say you give Ringo the ability to be a foreman, it'll let you know who's checking them in. We have time in and location in. And then we also have, information about the device that was used. So we give you as much information as you need. And then if there's anything that's not provided in the audit trails inside Knowify, you can always reach out to our team. We keep more detailed logs about, the back-end data, which we can show you as well. And then again, this is what a job log is going to look like, where it shows every action that's been performed and who performed it and when. So we have that option as well.
And are you able to see like what changes were made or just that there were changes made?
So that's, if you need those more specific details, that's basically when we would get into, you can reach out to us. We could check the back end logs.
So yeah, someone officially really messed something up.
Exactly.
Go back in.
It's not the most common thing, but it does happen. Next question was, how do you handle change orders? I did touch briefly on this, but just to show you again, if I open up a contract, the value is currently 24,800, and we have a button here that says, add change order, and I can adjust the contract value based off of, just by adding more items. If I were to make this active, you'll see that the contract value increases by $1,000. Just to show us, the current new balance. And then when I click invoice now, it'll be another option of a line that I can invoice on this project.
Is there a view that shows you like all the open change orders that haven't been signed or
not a
like
specific view, but we do have a report on it.
Okay.
So under job reports and change order report, this will give you a breakdown of all that information. The account I'm working in now doesn't really have too many open change orders,
right.
So there's not much to show there. There's another follow-up question about real
estate investors.
If you want to reach out to me personally and ask questions, I'm happy to go into it. It's not really standard Knowify workflow, so I'm going to not spend too much time on the webinar going into it.
That's fine. Awesome. So what is your favorite feature about Knowify?
I really like the hours spent versus hours budgeting. I think it's really kind of the most important thing. I used to work for a company that did construction estimating, and being able to see if I could look at old jobs when I was putting together an estimate and see how much time they actually spent us, as opposed to me saying like, I think it'll be about 20 hours. It would definitely have made, my life much easier.
Yeah.
Similarly, having the location tracking on employees is major. you worked with a lot of people in the field, and they'll try anything they can to get out of punching in and punching out. But it is really important for the business owner to be able to see are they at the job site, and how much is it costing me for their time. So
Right. And at the business owner level, like, they can see it can be as lenient as they want to be on it, but you getting the truth as to, yeah, what's actually happening. Definitely.
absolutely.
Yeah. It helps with managing everything.
Um, and then, I mean, I'm very biased. I like a lot of different features in Knowify because I've been working with
You
Knowify for
think?
quite some time, and I've gotten to see them all built. But there's just a lot of different features in a very small package. Very small, affordable package. It's there's really no limit on what you can accomplish there.
Right.
Um, and we do have a promo code for everyone who took the time to join into our webinar today.
Woohoo.
Speaking of affordable software, if you want an extra $25 off your first month or your first year of Knowify, depending on how you pay, you can use this code, and it'll make it a little bit cheaper to get started.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's everything I had for today. And it looks like the questions stopped coming in. Thank you again, Kathy, for having us. I'm really happy I got a chance to show everyone a little bit more about what we do, and how Knowify can really help their business.
Yeah, thank you for being here and telling everyone about Knowify. I know someone just asked about sending your contact information. You guys, I believe, will be reaching out to people that have signed up. And then I can make sure that you get the contact information too. If anyone wants to email me or them, we'll make sure it happens. So we got you covered on all of that. So again, thank you so much, Taryn, for your time today. Thank you for showing Knowify. This is definitely an awesome app for contractors out there. And I think my biggest takeaway, my biggest thing I wanted to talk about was there's so many people right now that are looking for how to get new clients. And like you said, it's when a contractor is going from Excel to needing something more of a professional workflow and helping grow their business that way, you can really come in and help them take that leap. And obviously there's cleanup, it sounds like, is going to happen a lot, and making sure they're set up and helping them with the workflow and being that resource for them, I think would be huge, and a huge way just to reaching out to contractors and saying, hey, are you ready to get some more organization in this so that you can be more profitable and really grow your business right now, because things are hard and you need to find a way to make this business work, sort of thing. So huge selling point for you guys that are looking for clients. And yeah, definitely get out there and talk to them about how you can make their business better by using an app like Knowify. So again, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. This webinar is recorded. We'll have it available to you guys. You can view like anytime. Tell your friends, share. So thanks again, Taryn, and we'll see everyone next time. Bye.